Hey, Rob here, and this episode of the Crooked Table Podcast is sponsored by Audible. Of course, this year we're journeying through the wizarding world of Harry Potter, and one of the very best ways to experience the book series is through the incredible audiobooks performed by Jim Dale. Audible has the entire series and so much more just waiting for you. To check out thousands of audiobooks, podcasts, and other spoken word entertainment, start your free 30-day trial today over at audibletrial.com/crooked table. That's audibletrial.com/crooked table. Now, on with the show.
Welcome to the Crooked Table Podcast, where we discuss the world of film from a fresh angle. And now your host, Robert Yanis Jr.
Welcome to the Crooked Table Podcast. This is Rob. On the show, we democratize the film criticism conversation by bringing on fans and critics alike to dig into their personal connection to a current or classic release. This episode, we're going to be doing the third installment of our, I guess, most of the year long delving into the Harry Potter series. This week, we're going to be talking about the Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, the third entry, and I am honored to welcome back to the show, Jackson Smith. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
So I feel like every time we have you on, because last time it was for the third installment of a fan favorite fantasy series in one of these things. So eventually we have to get you back on here to talk about a movie of your choice that's not linked to something that we're, like an ongoing series. But you
something that's not a third movie too.
At least that.
Yeah.
So tell people who haven't heard your previous episodes that you've been on, who you are, what you have going on, and I hear you have a project going on that involves the Dark Knight himself.
I do, yes. I am under payroll for Warner Brothers currently, so
very exciting.
So I can't say anything bad about them in this podcast. No, but I am a filmmaker and podcaster. My roommate Adam Barnard and I have our own podcast called the Home Experience Podcast, where we review movies that are out on the home market or movies that we love that you can watch from the comfort of your own home. We host these up on our Screen Fever channel, where I also post short films, video essays, other discussions we have about certain things industry related. And when I'm not doing that, I am writing and directing. And currently, I'm working with a friend of mine, Rachel Hemsley, and we are doing a few different web series for the DC Kids channel, all focused on Batman. So the one we're currently on right now is called Building with Batman, and it's like a DIY series, but all Batman themed and with a little Batman action figure narrating it. So obviously not high art, but it's been a ton of fun, and honestly, the seeing the reception to it over the last several weeks has been really, really cool. So
well, that seems really awesome. I mean, plus, you're working with these like iconic characters that everyone knows too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, getting the chance to work with Batman in any capacity is kind of a gift unto itself.
It is. It's fascinating. It's like I know this is not Harry Potter related, but it's interesting because you're making a television, or not television, a web show for kids, right, and geared towards kids. But the more you delve into Batman mythology and Batman's history and comic books, there's a lot about it that's not kid friendly.
Right. Oh yeah.
So honestly, the biggest challenge of writing has just been like finding a way to okay, we're doing a Joker episode. How do we do that without getting
no killing joke references? First of all.
Exactly. Yeah, we can't talk about that. We if we say fell into a vat of chemicals, we have to word it in such a way to where it doesn't sound too nasty. So it's but honestly, I've loved the challenge it's presented. It's and like I said, it's just been a lot of fun, and I think a lot of the episodes we've done I'm really proud of, and I at the very least I hope it will be a gateway drug for kids to actually really get into the comics and really, really get into the nitty gritty of Batman mythology, because it's really cool. I had to do a lot of research and I found out a lot of really awesome stuff. I might be watching the Dark Knight trilogy actually next with my roommates. So
nice.
As a result of it.
Are there any particular incarnations of the character that you're sort of looking into as far as inspiration for the kind of tone, like whether it's the Adam West series or some of the lighter comics, the Brave and the Bold animated show, perhaps things like that?
Brave and the Bold, Brave and the Bold is my favorite because that show was definitely, I think, the most kid friendly out of all the animated not to ding Batman the Animated Series because, of course, that's, you know, the holy grail. But I really love Brave and the Bold, and I, even as an adult, I find the humor in that show to be so on point and so like it feels like a great blend of sort of like comics Batman, but also Adam West Batman.
Right.
So we've been using a lot of Brave and the Bold stuff for this show, and I've been watching a lot of that, and it's really good.
Nice. Yeah, I think to your point, it's interesting as being a fan of all these long running franchises that kind of take different incarnations. You know, we talked about Star Wars last time. Obviously, you're working with Batman, and now Harry Potter. We're going to talk about how there's variations. Like, you know, I have a 3-year-old here, so obviously I'm not going to show her Revenge of the Sith, which we talked about, or even Batman the Animated Series. But, you know, introducing her to like the Star Wars, Forces of Destiny web series, or like, you know, something like The Brave and the Bold, or you know, even what the shows you've been working on. I'm going to have to go and check that out and show her some of those. So I think it's you know, for us fans of these kinds of things, it's really key to hone in on, like, well, what is the gateway drug? If I have a 3-year-old and I want her to be into Star Wars and Batman, what are some good places to start with that? So I think in that way you're doing the brand a real service by working with DC Kids, because you're helping grown-ups, fans, parents like myself find a way to have that character and that mythology accessible to the children, rather than be like, hey, come here, let's put on the Dark Knight. Don't worry about it.
Let's put on Joker.
Yeah. God, that's even worse. Yeah, true.
Yeah. Well, it's actually you make a good point, and I think that's why that's why I'm so excited to talk about Harry Potter today, because I just went back and rewatched all the movies in honor of this discussion, and what I think is so cool about Harry Potter as a franchise, or as a thing that exists, is, you know, when it comes to getting kids into it, you literally just start with the first movie. What's so cool about that series is that, you know, you start right at the beginning, and the first movie it's a kids movie. It's like totally a kids movie. And then, like, as you keep watching it, you know, and as the characters grow up, it then sort of evolves into something a lot darker and more mature, you know, with a lot more complicated themes and a lot more social commentary. You know, it's like, so it's just a really cool thing. And if I had kids, I would be so, like, honestly, like, showing them the first Harry Potter movie would just be like top of the list for me, because it's like, not only are you probably going to love this thing, but the more you delve into this thing, you know, the more interesting it's going to get. And, you know, as you get older, you're going to be able to understand it more. And I just think that's so cool as a thing that exists.
And you don't usually see that sort of steady evolution in a franchise from beginning to end. I mean, this came out the first one came out in 2001. My brother, who's 8 years younger than me, was 10. So he was almost exactly the age of the characters as they were coming out in real time, because the movies came out about a year and a half apart. They're set each one is chronicling a different year. So it's like you're growing up with these actors and these characters in the real time progression as Harry is sort of moving forward on his journey and all that stuff. And I think I feel like that kind of one-to-one comparison between characters, actors, and fans has never really been done like that before. I mean, even something like Star Wars was all over the place. I mean, where they jump back in time and forward and all of that. Like, there was no steady progression. I think the closest we have is Force Awakens being set 30 years after Return of the Jedi, and actually coming out around 30 years after Return of the Jedi, but not throughout the franchise like that.
It's unprecedented. Honestly, I think the closest point of reference I can think of is Boyhood. But that wasn't something you watched along and along. It was just one movie where you sat and watched a kid grow up. Whereas, like, Harry Potter was, you know, you were watching these kids grow up, but you were doing it with them. You know, I mean, like, I was 6 when the first one came out. I was born in '95, so I was 6 in 2001. So I wasn't quite the age of Harry in that movie, but by the time the last one came out, I was about to graduate high school. So I was the age he was supposed to be canonically. So I definitely grew up with those movies, and it's like, you know, revisiting them as an adult, I can see just how much of an impact that franchise had, just not just on my sensibilities as a creative and a filmmaker, but me as a human being. Like, it's, you know, the lessons that story teaches and the themes it delves into are, I think, really essential for kids, and really, really at the core of good coming of age stories, and it is kind of the ultimate coming of age story. So.
Yeah, it reminds me, you mentioned Boyhood. It just struck me that, my wife and I we'd recently been together for 9 years, and on our anniversary, we were watching the Before movies, like 2 of the Before movies. Before Sunrise and Sunset. And it's kind of like that, because that similarly has the real-time gaps of storytelling and the actors and everything like that. So I think that's probably, but there's no magic in that, so we're not talking about that.
No magic.
Not yet.
There's
not yet.
Movie
I will definitely
magic.
cover that at some point. I love those movies.
Yeah, Richard Linklater, man, genius.
Yeah, good stuff. I feel like I'm ready to jump into the movie itself, because I was going to ask about your thoughts of the franchise, but I feel like we kind of briefly touched on them. So I think let's just transition into this, because I want to find out where Prisoner of Azkaban lands for you within the franchise itself. So here's a little bit of the trailer for Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban.
Sirius Black is the reason the Potters are dead.
And now he wants to finish what he started.
I want you to swear to me you won't go looking for Black.
Why would I go looking for someone who wants to kill me?
Harry Potter.
There's something moving out there.
It was a Dementor, one of the guards of Azkaban, searching the train for Sirius Black.
It is not in the nature of a Dementor to be forgiving.
I hope he finds me. Because when he does, I'm going to be ready.
You must look beyond.
That was a little bit of the trailer for Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, directed by Alfonso Cuarón, released in 2004. So, Jackson, is this your favorite and or the objectively best Harry Potter movie in the franchise?
It is the Empire Strikes Back of Harry Potter movies. I think it is 100% my favorite, like by a pretty wide margin. And it is also, I think it is probably the best in the whole franchise, and it's widely regarded as the best in the franchise by most people who know a lot about filmmaking. And I think that comes down to the director. I think they got a lot of really cool directors to do Harry Potter. Chris Columbus is I have a soft spot for Chris Columbus. I think he's really good. David Yates is, I think, really talented. But like Alfonso Cuarón is kind of like a once in a generation genius. Like every movie he does feels so well crafted and so expertly engineered. Like he uses every single cinematic tool to help tell the story in a way that very few other filmmakers do. So to see him get to leave his mark on such a popular franchise it's such a blessing. Like I can't even think of another instance of probably Last Jedi. Honestly, I think that's another example of a time where a genius director was allowed to make a genius movie. But yeah, no, this is definitely hands down my favorite and probably one of my favorite movies of all time. I think it's definitely up there.
Wow. Yeah, because when I put out that I was doing the Harry Potter movies this year, you were like the first one to be like, oh, Prisoner of Azkaban, I'll get that. I remember that. And I mean, I do really like the first 2 movies. I talked about them already on the show, but there is a certain lack of, I don't know what it is. Maybe our artistic style that those 2 movies have. Like they're good, they're fun, they're solid. They set up the world, they create everything. Chris Columbus is obviously instrumental in everything that happens after that. But this to me kind of feels like the first movie in the Harry Potter franchise where the art side of it is kind of undeniable. Like it's not, the other 2 you can watch and obsess over, or you can watch and be like, I don't know if these are for me. But this one, even if you're like not into the franchise, you're like, okay, this is really well made though. Like look at the effects, look at the art direction and the music, which we'll get into as you mentioned. So it's like, I feel like this is where it starts to elevate, the franchise starts to elevate to another level. And it's also, I talked about on the last one about how Chamber of Secrets is really sort of the end of an era as far as that type of storytelling. This is where we lean even further into the dark. And this is really the last one I would say that's air quotes kid friendly, as in no children die in this movie. There's no traumatic deaths in this film like there are in the rest of them.
Yeah, it's also it's the first of the Harry Potter stories that is not too explicitly fantasy. Like I think the like Philosopher's Stone. Wow, sorry, Sorcerer's Stone and Chamber of Secrets are both like, okay, giant snake in the castle, giant evil snake in the castle. Whereas like the plot of Prisoner of Azkaban is, serial killer escapes from wizard jail. Like, I mean, that's exactly. Kind of high concept, but the stakes are so much more personal and so much more real. Like, I think this is the movie where the franchise really started to delve into, actual issues, like things that reflect problems in the real world, as opposed to using sort of big fantasy elements as stand-ins for that, which is kind of what the Chris Columbus movies do.
Right. Well, yeah, with the last one, they had the whole thing with mudbloods, and like that was the huge, like that whole magical white nationalism, I guess.
Yep.
Pretty much. And I think that not only that, and then also the fact that this is the first one where they venture off the school grounds throughout the story. The first one where they're featured in clothes other than their Hogwarts robes. And it's the first one that's coming from Cuarón, obviously now is, Oscar-winning filmmaker, Roma and Gravity, all that, Children of Men, which came after this. But at this point, he was basically best known for Y Tu Mamá También. So coming from, I think the creative team behind the franchise knew that they needed something, they needed to kick it up a notch, to inject some fresh blood. Otherwise, I feel like this stories could have gotten kind of stagnant if we had the Chris Columbus sort of strict template to the books too. That's the other thing too, because I feel like this movie benefits a great deal from not feeling so episodic where, this 5-minute chunk is chapter 1, this 5-minute chunk is chapter 2. Do you agree about that as well?
I think here's what I have to say about that. Especially like going back and watching the first two movies. I think the first two movies, you are, whether as a kid or as just a general audience member, you're getting accustomed to the world. So like every single scene or every single chapter in those first two stories is like, oh, here's a new element. You're like, we can do this with magic. This is something that's possible. There is a wizard bank, this and that. By the time you've gotten to the third one in the story, like you kind of know how everything works. Like you have a general sense of like, okay, this is how magic works. This is how the magical world works. This is how Hogwarts works. So what's great about that is it sort of frees you up to tell a story that's a lot more internal. I think like the first two movies, like all the conflict is very external, like again, like giant snake, magical stone, Voldemort, yada, yada, yada. Whereas like this movie, and I think this story is a lot more about what's going on inside Harry's head and sort of how he's developing and growing up and responding emotionally to the events happening around him. So yeah, I think it was really smart to get a filmmaker like Cuarón, because he had done before this. He did The Little Princess, which is a really, really incredible kids movie from the 90s. Which is obvious, which could be seen as sort of like an audition for Harry Potter.
Oh, very much so.
But he had also done Y Tu Mamá También, which is a Mexican sex comedy. So, and which is, I think, the reason J.K. Rowling hired him. I think she wanted somebody who could do sort of like this whimsical fantasy, but like bring an element of like
rawness
of rawness. Yeah, exactly. Of a real youthful energy to it, which feels unique to the point in Harry's life that he's at when the movie starts.
Yeah, I think, speaking it to the larger franchise, I feel like this is kind of the last moment. You mentioned how the first two set up the world. I feel like this is kind of their only time to really like take a moment and breathe, because after the next movie, it's just all Voldemort's return.
Oh, yeah.
And so this is kind of like, in a way, kind of the Harry Potter character study movie that's in the middle of the franchise, where it's like, all right, this is what happened with him. This is how he's processing it. And now he's kind of really being challenged as far as Voldemort returns. He has to train an army. He has to face him, blah, 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 the prophecy and all that other stuff that's coming up. I feel like this is the only one in which Voldemort does not appear in any form.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think that's kind of telling that it works so well because it does kind of function as a standalone in a way, and it also bridges that gap between, as you said, sort of the boilerplate. This is how magic works, and it's Harry and Voldemort to the finish, to the death. It's kind of the last little bit of lead up into that kind of the grander story that's to be told.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No. It's the movie. It's the movie where I think Harry gets to be a complex character for the first time. Like he's a great character in the first two movies, but he does kind of exist as the audience POV. Like he is kind of seeing this all for the first time. So we're kind of growing and learning along with him. Whereas like this movie is like, Harry's depressed, like he's depressed. He's dealing with depression. He's dealing with anxiety. He's like sort of struggling to find his place in the world. And it's like, this is the movie I think where it's definitely the first movie where Daniel Radcliffe gets to really show his acting chops. But it's like, it's the first movie where you really fall for him as a character. And I think you need that going into the rest of the story because Goblet of Fire, things start getting nuts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the big turning point concludes with a teenage death.
Still the most intense scene in a movie.
Yeah.
Oh God. Movie I've ever seen.
Well, I mean, it's
still
when I first saw that, and now we're not talking about this movie anymore. But when I first saw it was very intense. But as I've grown up and now I haven't even watched it. I haven't seen these movies since I've become a father. So now to watch that thing at the end with Cedric's dad kind of running over to him, and I'm probably gonna cry more than normal.
It's intense.
But yeah, so I feel like we are kind of a good starting point here if we're gonna break this down element by element. Is Harry himself? Is kind of where this finds him. Radcliffe's performance. I mean, we've sort of touched on it already, but just from the very beginning, I think you already sort of get the sense of, oh shit, it's real. They just became teenagers. Hormones are flying, and there's rebellious energy in the air. We open up with the Lumos Maxima under the sheets, which could be read as whatever you want to do, that whatever you think, whatever metaphor you want for rebellion, whether he's like exploring whatever, or experimenting with whatever, or he's found his Uncle Vernon's dirty magazines, or whatever you want to talk about. I feel like it is sort of the taking that metaphorical, the allegory of the first two and sort of building on it and applying it to the world that the previous two movies have created.
Yeah, I really love that first scene. I think because it sort of has it has a more it has more taboo quality to it than I think the intros to the previous movies have. Like he's doing something in secret in his room, and it feels so. It feels so intimate. You know?
It's like almost like secretly. I mean, I'm just gonna say it. It's like secretly like magical masturbation, kind of. It seems like the metaphor because he's around that age. He's under the sheets. He's hiding when the door is open. And I think keeping that in a kid-friendly context, but also you're getting the understanding that he's trying to find his own path. He's rebelling against his uncle and his aunt's authority in a way that he didn't even before. I mean, we should probably just talk about the whole Aunt Marge thing, which is really indicative of that. Just the way that we finally see that angry side of Harry really come to the forefront.
It's the first time too that like you see him use magic. You see him explicitly and intentionally use magic outside of school. Like that, like they sort of plant that and they say like, oh, okay, you're not supposed to use magic outside of school. Obviously, it's okay if you dropped your cousin in a snake tank in the first one because you didn't know you were a wizard yet. But like at this point, like Harry knows, doing the Lumos spell under his sheets or blowing his aunt up, like that's something that could get him kicked out of Hogwarts. Right. But he's so angry and he's so angsty and he's so sad that he can't stop himself. And I think that was something that I didn't really like register with me when I watched it when I was a kid, that like Harry was playing with fire. But like I think it just really goes to show just at what stage he's in mentally when this movie starts.
And it's also the beginning of that dichotomy between him and Voldemort. I mean, yes, you get the Parseltongue in the last one, but where we go further on in the story where he starts to wonder, am I going to go bad like he did? Yeah. Exactly. He says in Order of the Phoenix, I'm so angry all the time. And here you're seeing that films earlier already being kind of set up and like how he's dealing, like basically with post-traumatic stress disorder from this situation, the tragedy with his parents, and how, you know, the life that he's led, being forced under the stairs and on Privet Drive and living under a constant abuse. I mean, it's like it's a kind of a miracle that he didn't turn out to be a bad wizard after everything he's been through.
Exactly. I think that's probably my favorite, or one of my favorite elements of the series as a whole, is the idea that deep down, I think Harry and Voldemort are kind of the same person in different circumstances. Like they share very similar passions. They share very similar anxieties. They're both incredibly smart and cunning. The difference, though, is that I think Harry had people come into his life who showed him a lot of love, and Voldemort just has absolutely zero concept of love that isn't somehow tied to fear. So it's like, because of that one difference, you have these two characters who just went off in completely opposite trajectories, even though they're extremely, extremely similar deep down.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you get the imagery in the beginning with Aunt Marge kind of floating over everyone. And I actually didn't realize this at the time, but I'm trying to find the actress's name. That's the actress that played Miss Trunchbull in Matilda.
What?
Yes.
I don't know if I knew that.
I didn't know that until recently. I actually, for some reason, never saw Matilda when it came out. So I didn't see it until a few years ago. And then when I was like, Who is this person? Why does she look familiar? I was like, oh my God, she was Aunt Marge. That's craziness.
Oh, man.
I think she's just got a kind of an interest in dark family films with disturbing imagery. I mean, we'll get to some of that later on. There's a lot of animal people in this. The transformations are kind of freaky at times. But yeah, speaking to Harry's point, the way his arc goes throughout this film, I really enjoyed seeing that progression and seeing the influence that people in his life, that you're saying, have on him. We see that later on too, with when he puts on the cloak and he goes to Hogsmeade, and he has that whole where he discovers that basically the exposition scene when he discovers Sirius Black's connection to his parents, and you get that real kind of outburst with Ron and Hermione, where he basically declares that he's going to kill Sirius Black. I think that's where you kind of really see that he's on the precipice of going to whatever the magical version of the dark side is.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, yeah, because it's like, I think, you know, it goes back to what we were saying about sort of like making the stakes a little bit more grounded. Like up till this point in the franchise, like you know, we've just seen Voldemort as sort of this is the reason your parents are dead. Right. He's so powerful that he's not even a real person. He's just kind of like this external force, like a hurricane. So it's like, okay, well, there's nothing really you can do about that other than, just do your best whenever it comes up. But it's like, now Harry has like a real tangible person who he believes is responsible for his parents' death, something that someone who he can actually like encounter and actually like interact with. And it's like, to see his reaction to that being like, I'm going to kill him, just like it just speaks to how on edge he is. And it also just makes it, I think it just, I know we're jumping around the movie a lot, but I think it makes it so much more satisfying too. And he finds out that Sirius wasn't responsible for his parents' death, but finds out that Peter Pettigrew was. But when he sees Peter Pettigrew for the first time, he's not this big, scary, escaped convict. He's a coward. He's like a shell of a human being. And I think it's this really cool moment in the movie and in the book where Harry realizes that it's like people aren't evil. Evil is evil, and people do evil things. And it's like that there's nothing good is going to come from enacting revenge on this just pathetic mess of a human being.
Right.
and it's a really cool development to see him say at one point in the movie, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill the guy who sold out my parents. And then at the end of the movie say, no, we're going to take him to Azkaban. We're going to do the right thing. It shows that even though Harry is an incredibly angsty and incredibly angry person, he's somebody whose moral compass is driven by love and compassion, and that's what allows him to succeed.
Yeah, and you get the literal and metaphorical rat that is Peter Pettigrew, which
Very clever.
That is, that was also one of the great, I think, twists especially early on in this franchise, that they had established Scabbers as Ron's pet, like in the earlier stories, in the books as well, and then sort of had that turn here where this has been going on the whole time. And I think this movie really explores the outside edges of what happened to Harry. Like, we learn much more about the context of Voldemort's turn, his attack on his parents, because he finds out the 3 other people whose names are on that map that they never tell anybody in the movies the origin of, which is a whole other thing that I have issues with. But by meeting Black and Lupin especially, and Pettigrew, I think it really fills out his understanding of those events, and ultimately leading to that epiphany that you mentioned.
It is very realistic I think that's very realistic to sort of how we process the world as we grow up. Like when, like if you're to ask a question like, why do people die, or why do people do bad things? When you're 11 or 12, you're going to get an answer that's very like, people, some people go bad, or, some things are very dangerous, or this or that. But it's like, as you get older and as you're able to sort of understand complex emotions and understand human behavior on a more intricate level, the world gets bigger. You understand like, okay, this is how things work. Things are a lot more complicated. So I like that. Again, I love that the Harry Potter franchise is sort of, it is growing up as it's about growing up. It's like you get to this point in Harry's development, and now you're starting to see, oh wow, this world is so much bigger. This situation is so much more complex. There's a lot more going on here, in the way that, when you turn 13, you realize that there's a lot more going on in the world that you didn't know about.
Yeah, it's the Inside Out thing of at the end of that Pixar movie where Riley's board is way more complex and has way more buttons and switches on it. Which is like, oh crap, I didn't realize I couldn't just be sad or happy. I could be, I could be both simultaneously. Sort of the in Sing Street, they mentioned this thing called Happy Sad, which I really love that movie too.
I love Sing Street, great movie.
Yeah, great movie. But yeah, and then I think you can sort of read the Patronus as kind of the metaphor for him just learning to manage his emotions. And, the whole thing with Lupin, whose solution is always chocolate, by the way, so you got to love him for that. Here, the chocolate will make you feel better. I agree. It would make me feel better. Right now in the pandemic, having chocolate would make me feel better.
Yes.
But Harry faints like 4 times trying to, confronted with literally the ghost of his past, his mother's scream. And I think that's a pretty clear metaphor for trying to come to terms with childhood trauma. And I think that's an interesting theme that the movie explores.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think deep down, like if you were to ask me, like, like what is this movie about? Like I really think it's about depression and how we sort of to fight through the sadness that's invades us from the inside out. We sort of have to find the light that shines from the inside out, and the Patronus throughout the movie is used as such a beautiful metaphor for that. Like I think probably like my favorite moment in this movie is that final scene where Harry casts the big Patronus that scares all the Dementors away. Yeah. Because the whole movie, you're introduced to the Patronus as a thing, okay, it's this thing that, it expels Dementors, which suck the happiness out of you. And then you find out to do it, you need to sort of find the happiest moment with
your happy
yourself.
Place, basically. Yeah,
you have to find your happy place, and it's like Harry can't do that. He can't do that the whole movie because he doesn't know where his happy place is anymore. It's like there's this moment where he's in Lupin's office, and Lupin's like, what's your happiest memory? And he's like, oh, it's riding on a broom for the first time. And it's like, no, it's not. Because if it were that, the Patronus would have worked. And I just love that, like, he gets to the end of the movie and he thinks that the person who cast that Patronus is his dad. Like, he thinks that it's like, oh, my dad came and saved me. But it's like only when he's able to like accept his parents' death and process the fact that they're not coming back to save him and that he's going to be the only one to save himself is when he's able to sort of do that. And it's such a beautiful moment and such a powerful expression of his journey. So definitely credit to J.K. Rowling for that. But I think the way Cuarón leads you through that in the film is so special and so unique.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in keeping with Cuarón's sort of irreverent, like extra irreverent take on the franchise, you get that moment where they're flying on Buckbeak and he's like, oh, I knew I could do it because I'd already done it. That whole thing. Does that make sense? And everybody's like, no. So you get that big emotional payoff, and then it's sort of like magic. Isn't this all weird? Magic. And first of all, we'll get to this later, but magic plus werewolves plus time travel. It's like, shut up, take my money kind of thing. Which we'll talk about towards the end of the conversation. We'll get into the whole time turner sequence, which is kind of caps off all of this. So let's see. Let's talk about, I guess we can kind of go, first I want to talk about the Grimm and how we meet Emma Thompson's Trelawney in this. And she was apparently, I remember this around when the movie came out, those scenes, they almost wanted to cut them. Like Cuarón wanted to not even include Trelawney, from what I understand. And J.K. Rowling was the one that was like, no, you need those in there. They're important. They're going to pay off later on. And obviously they do.
She becomes important later on with the prophecy and everything.
Right.
So.
Well, the prophecy and the whole the whole thing with Harry and Voldemort, one of them must die, and then ultimately, we know where that goes with Harry. So I think that's a really interesting addition, just kind of in the larger mythology of things, and the way that it's sort of misdirected with Sirius being an animagus, and that like him kind of being almost the manifestation of the Grimm or misinterpreted as such early on. Mm-hmm. I think that's a really cool thing to do. So let's talk about any thoughts on that, I guess, first before we move on to the Night Bus.
I did not know that Cuarón didn't want to keep those scenes in. That's interesting. I first of all, I think it's Emma Thompson, right, who plays Trelawney?
Yes.
Yeah, she's incredible casting. Just genius. I love that the Harry Potter movies are just a way for all these phenomenal British actors to just come in and mess around.
Oh, I mean, when you get Alan Rickman and Timothy Spall and Gary Oldman and David Thewlis all in one scene at one point, you're like, oh my gosh, this is like Shakespeare at Hogwarts, basically.
It's amazing. It's so amazing. So I really love her in the movie. I love that. First of all, I love that you have a teacher that Hermione doesn't like. Mm-hmm. I think that was an element I picked up on this time that I thought was really fascinating. Because up till now, of course, Hermione is an academic genius. Like she just loves reading, she loves studying, she loves going to school. So it's really fascinating to have a dynamic where it's like they all leave the divination class, and of course, up till this point, everybody's like, the audience is like, oh, okay, they're crystal balls, like they're wizards, sure, whatever. And Hermione walks out of class, she's just like, it's a crock of bullshit. It's such a fun character moment because Hermione grew up in the Muggle world, so she has an understanding of Muggles, how Muggles perceive magic that Ron and other people don't necessarily. So it's like she gets to a classroom with a bunch of crystal balls and somebody's like, I'm going to read your tea leaves in your future, and she's like, I've seen some crazy shit, but I don't buy this. And it's cool. It's a fun little detail about her character, and I really love it. Yeah, no, I would definitely keep those scenes in the movie.
Yeah, you could see how in the context of this story how it almost wouldn't fit, but in the grand scheme of things, it does. It's kind of important to set up everything else that comes later, but yeah, I think that it is a cool opportunity to sort of Hermione, the character who's so thirsty for knowledge, she's taking multiple classes at the same time. But yeah.
It's also it's fascinating. I think the divination element is fascinating to this as it pertains to this story, because it is all about the story is all about time too. It's about finding the time to fix our mistakes while we still have the chance. And of course you got the time turner where they like actually go back in time for the climax. So adding the element of divination and seeing into the future is I think fits in really well with that, because like when they're in the classroom for the first time and Trelawney says like, oh, I've seen something in your future and it's dangerous. You're like, okay, well, if this is real, right? Like if this whole crystal ball thing is real and she actually knows what she's talking about, you know, shit's going to go down. Like, you know, that Harry's in actual trouble. It raises the stakes for the whole story. And yeah, I think it's really necessary.
Yeah, I think, too, the other thing with Trelawney that I find kind of interesting is that, you know, you could almost have the Hermione response, be like, she doesn't know what she's talking about. But then when she seems like she's channeling something, Trelawney, she seems almost unaware of it. She's like, oh, did you say something? Like, it's almost like she's like, passing off that she doesn't really have these abilities, but doesn't know that she actually does. If that even makes any sense. So I think that's a really like fun kind of reversal.
Yeah, exactly, and it's scary too. Like I remember when I saw that scene as a kid, it really scared me because like you're like, oh, okay, she's the divination teacher. She sees into the future. This is just something she does. But then immediately after she sort of gives Harry that prophecy, she's like, did you say something? What just happened? And it's like, oh, wow, wait a minute. That was real. That was,
yeah.
This is real.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, it raises the stakes for the whole story. So really smart.
And to your point about how the story is all about time, you even get in this movie, the Whomping Willow obviously has a key role to play towards the end, but it's also, you get those shots to it sort of season by season. Almost like La La Land style. Like now we're in the fall, now we're in the winter.
Yeah.
So I think that's another way the movie sort of makes that explicit that, hey, we're tracking how time is progressing in real time of the story, but also, you know, jumping back and forth between the past, the future, and all of that stuff. I think it's a really thematically rich movie. I'm even appreciating even more as we're talking about, like, wow, like all of this is very well, like of the piece in a way. Yeah. In a way that Revenge of the Sith was more so than the previous two prequels, obviously. I feel like this one has a better understanding of the story that's telling than the previous two Harry Potters.
Robert, if you haven't figured out yet, I am a theme nut. I love movies that have I love movies that have a lot to say and find really clever ways of saying them, which is, I think, why this is my favorite out of all of them. I can't wait to talk about The Last Shot, but that we'll get to that at the end. But I wanted to thank you for bringing up the Whomping Willow bit, because that was another thing I noticed on this last rewatch. You know, like in the past Harry Potter movies, in the first two, you know, when it would change seasons, you would just suddenly smash cut to a shot of the castle where with just like beautiful sheets of snow everywhere.
Happy Christmas, Harry. Happy
John
Christmas,
Williams
Ron.
Christmas music coming in, you know, and I love that, you know, as a director, Alfonso Cuarón chose to use the Whomping Willow as a way to move you through this story, right? Because it's not exactly what you would expect. Like, you know, up till now, the Whomping Willow has just been that crazy tree from the second second movie. But I love that you get like anytime you want to understand the passage of time, you understand it through this object. It makes the world feel so much bigger and makes the world feel so much more real. It makes it feel like there's stuff going on outside of Harry's story. It's just a really smart way to express the passage of time through filmmaking. And another thing that I just didn't notice when I was a kid, I was like, oh, you know, what's the difference between winter being just a wide shot of a snowy castle or winter being a tree just shrugging off all of its leaves at once. Like,
right.
I think there's a lot more power in one of those. There's a lot more power in one of those images. And that's the kind of image that a great director would come up with.
Yeah, I think so. Those little touches, I think, are go a long way towards making the whole story feel cohesive, as opposed to a series of vignettes, I guess, in a way.
Exactly. Yes.
I want to talk about the night bus, but I feel like it's also makes sense to sort of loop in. No, that was not intentional. Sort of loop in a couple other things. So what I want to do is I want to talk about the night bus. And then with that, John Williams' music, because his piece there especially stands out to me. And then the whole train sequence and the Dementors. I feel like that's kind of one nice built-in tangent from one to the next. So the night bus is the one of like several new additions, magical landscape-wise, that we get. We get the night bus, we get the boggarts, which again, Lupin fearing the moon. It's again kind of overcoming trauma and that kind of thing. It's sort of baked into the theme of what we're saying. We get the Dementors. So what are your thoughts on the night bus sequence, which apparently, from my research, tells me uses bullet time for some of that stuff, which again, time, I don't know if Cuarón was trying. He's like, we're going to use it. What technology uses time in the name? We're going to use
there's that scene where they have to squeeze in between the two double
Why the long faces?
So they, literally slow down time.
Yes.
I love the night bus. It's one of my favorite things in Harry Potter. I think too, because when that shows up in the story, what our understanding of the magical world is wizards and broomsticks and magical trees and this and that. It's all stuff that sort of feels very high fantasy. So I love that the first exposure that you get to the wizarding world in this story is a double-decker bus. It's like a bus that you would just see driving around London, except it's got 3 stories. There are beds in it. The driver is blind and he's being navigated by a little shrunken head. And it's cool because the wizarding world in the first 2 movies feels it's so escapist. It feels so fantasy. All of the clothes feel like they're out of a different time period, and it's all set in this magical castle. So it's so cool that you kind of kick off the movie with this part of the magical world that feels ripped from reality in a way. It feels ripped and at the same time married to normal everyday objects in the way that we haven't necessarily seen in other parts of the wizarding world. So it's so cool. It's just such a cool thing, and really in a way is a great signal of sort of what the rest of the series is going to look and feel like. It's going to look and feel like a blend of weird fantasy things that you'd never seen before and stuff that you would see just driving around London. So
I think it's the first time that you really see the wizarding world existing within our world.
Exactly.
Yeah, in the other ones, you're you run through the wall and then you're on
and you're in the wizarding world.
Yeah, 9 3/4. You tap the bricks the right way and welcome to Diagon Alley. But this is no, it's a little bit of the wizarding world that just travels around. And Harry even questions that at one point. He's like, what about the muggles? Won't they see anything? No, the muggles, they don't see anything, do they? And they're they kind of shrugs it off. And this is the way it's a great sequence. And I think it reminds me, to go back to Star Wars, with the John Williams connection, so it's easy to do that. It reminds me that his musical cue here reminds me a little bit of the Canto Bight song music from The Last Jedi.
Yeah,
and then all of a sudden,
that,
it feels like you're in Harry Potter or in Star Wars, and all of a sudden you're it really jazzes itself up, and you're it becomes much more frenetic and sort of feels like you're entering a pocket of the world within that world that is completely different than anything else that you've seen up to that point. So to your point, to what you were saying. So great.
I just want to say really quickly to sort of build on that, pretty soon after you get one of my favorite little details in this whole movie. Pretty soon after the night bus sequence, you get one of my favorite little details, which is Harry goes into the leaky cauldron, and you open in on this shot of this wizard sitting at a table, stirring stirring his tea with some magic, and he's reading Stephen Hawking. He's reading A Brief History of Time, and it's just so cool because it's up till now it's been you go to the fantasy world, and when you get into the fantasy world, everything is fantasy. But Cuarón was no, the fantasy world is still set on Earth, and you still have echoes and elements of normal, average, everyday life that are sort of seeping into the cracks of this wizarding world, and it makes it feel so much more authentic and makes it feel so, oh man, what's the word I'm looking for? It makes it feel like there's a world beyond the frame. It makes it feel like there's something. It makes it feel like you're watching snapshots of a place that actually exists rather than something that's being just crafted for the camera in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally. It makes me think of a criticism that I've heard and I mean, there's a lot of criticisms you could throw towards the Aladdin remake from last year, where
never saw it.
It's whatever. It's kind of, it's fine in elements, but then a mess in other ones. But it's kind of like, it feels like all the costuming and everything in that feels like you're watching a production of Aladdin. Like, it doesn't feel like it's lived in any way, shape, or form. It feels like the costumes were designed right off screen and then handed to the actor, basically. And I think that's a real highlight of this film, just in every element of the design. I mean, the art direction, just the way that this movie creates the Wizarding World, it makes it feel much more tangible than anything we've seen before. And I think it is because it's the first one, like we said, it's the first one to feature real clothes on its actors, to feature environments outside of Hogwarts walls and, I guess, the Dursleys' home, and to have those two worlds sort of bleeding together in a way that we haven't seen up to this point. And I think it's telling that, to sort of transition from the night bus sequence in John Williams' music, which is amazing, which got Oscar nominated, and his last score for the franchise, before I think Patrick Doyle did the next one, and then I forget who did some of the other ones. They switched around a little bit. But that it was Oscar nominated for the music, which also has, notably uses that Double Trouble song, which has lyrics from Macbeth. I guess we should talk about that briefly, with the toads that sing, and then the song of that, which was used heavily in the marketing. I remember the whole trailer was built around that song. So any other further thoughts on the music?
Oh my gosh. We're talking about like making the world feel real, and the music is a huge part of that. Like obviously, like I can imagine, when Christopher Columbus sat down with John Williams and said, like, what do I want for this movie? He was probably like, I want a score. I want themes and music, and I want it to feel beautiful and scary, and I want it to feel orchestral, and I want it to feel like something out of your childhood, like very Amblin-esque, very classic Spielberg. So of course the score that John Williams delivers on those first two movies, which is some of the best music he's ever written, it feels very of that era. It feels very Star Wars, Indiana Jones, a lot of big orchestral music, and then you get to Prisoner of Azkaban, which John Williams also composed, and there's jazz. There's jazz, and then there's the Double Trouble song, and then there's all these like really weird musical elements to that movie, which you wouldn't expect to come from a composer like John Williams, but John Williams I think he's got a background in jazz, so like he's very well versed musically, and it's always really exciting to see him do a movie that requires something other than big orchestral music, because it's always it always just works so well. Like the Night Bus theme is maybe not like the most, I'm using air quotes, we can't see because it's a podcast, it's maybe not the most like memorable theme, but it is so perfect for that scene, and just elevates the mood of that scene so effortlessly. And yeah, like when you come into Hogwarts for the first time, and you hear this choir of students singing the lyrics from Macbeth, over like the harpsichord, it's like it's so weird, and yet it makes the world feel novel and fresh again in a way. And oh man, he's such a genius. I think this might be my favorite Harry Potter score out of all of them. I think it doesn't have all of like my favorite individual pieces of music, but just as a score, it's incredible. It's masterful. I think it probably should have won the Oscar. But again, I think it reflects, a score can only be as good as the movie, as the picture that it's set to. So it really, I think the fact that this music is so good speaks to how interesting and fresh this movie is.
Yeah, there's a lot of foreboding in every note of his score here. It's a completely different tone for the franchise, not only because of the director, but we have a new Dumbledore, which we didn't even mention that yet. We have a much darker visual palette. We get the Dementors, who are soul-sucking demons, basically. So let's kind of talk about the train sequence, the Dementor design, and I guess transition into kind of talking about Lupin and some of the adult characters in this.
When I read the book, when I read the book back, I think I read it in 2002. Like the Dementors were creepy. I was like the way she describes it in the book is so vivid. Like you're like, oh, okay, so this like figure who looks like he's just got like a hood on just comes and makes you feel all of the worst negative emotions. I'm like, that's like really scary, but it is nothing compared to what you see in this movie. I remember watching, I think the Dementors showed up in the original trailer for this back when the movie came out, and I remember watching that trailer and being like, nothing I dreamed up in my head as I was reading that book was that scary. Like nothing, like even the scariest hooded figure I could imagine in my head didn't look that terrifying. It's great in a way because it's, obviously you can't detail what it feels like to have the happiness sucked out of you in a movie because you're just watching images on a screen. You don't get the intimacy that you have when you're reading prose on a page. So it's like, okay, how do you design a creature that is so evocative that instantly like, oh yeah, that thing is going to suck all my happiness out. And the Dementor designs are so brilliant because you just look at that thing with just this gauze kind of over its head and these like skeleton hands. Like it's so terrifying and does what an entire page of prose does in the book in a single frame of film.
Well, and the way they converge,
really incredible design.
The way they converge later on too by the lake and sort of getting ready for the Dementor's kiss, and we get the visual design of Sirius Black's soul kind of being this little like ball of light that's lifted out and then just drops back in at the last moment. Like all of that it's really kind of intense, which is again part of the reason that I'm like, I don't know if my 3-year-old is ready for these movies just yet. But to the movies, testament to the movies credit that we get in the same movie where we get the Dementors, these like terrifying creatures, we get Buckbeak, the hippogriff, and this sense of wonder that we get on the flight that Harry has on Buckbeak's back, and sort of the majesty of that creature, which harkens back to a little more of the tone of the first two movies, kind of again making that transition. We get one reference to the house points in this movie. We get very very brief Quidditch in the Rain, last real Quidditch sequence I think in these films before they're just like, yeah, we don't have time for that shit. We got
the sixth one has a lot of Quidditch because that's when Ron starts playing.
I guess it does. Yeah. But it became like, it's almost like this movie's trying to pay homage to the last two because that became a thing in the last two movies. Like, oh, Ron and Harry and Draco are gonna like face off, and then there's a Quidditch sequence, and somebody's house points are gonna get taken away. And here they're like, yeah, but we're gonna acknowledge that, but then we're gonna kind of do our own thing with it. And so I like the way that it carries over elements of the last two movies, but then introduces the Dementors and Azkaban and kind of keys up Voldemort's return. I mean, Trelawney even says that on this night, master and servant will be reunited, talking obviously, as we know now, Pettigrew and Voldemort. So I think let's talk a little bit about how, about the Buckbeak of it all and how that story plays into everything.
Well, I like how what I like about how Buckbeak functions in this movie is I think you touched on a really good point. Like the first two really settled into a rhythm of how we were being immersed into the world, and Quidditch is such an important element of that too. It's wizard sports and this and that, and it's like the time where you get to see all the crazy, the broom action and whatnot. But it's like by this point in the story, I mean, Harry's 13. This is his third year at Hogwarts. Quidditch is no longer. Oh my gosh, we're playing lacrosse on brooms. It's just like another. It's just another thing. It's just another part of average everyday life, in the same way that like kind of everything else is. So it's like what I think is so essential about Buckbeak in this story is it it makes, not only does it make the audience feel like they're back in the first two movies again, I think it makes Harry feel like he's back in his first 2 years again, because here's something else new. Here's this new element to the magical world, which is so dangerous and beautiful and exciting in the way that like pretty much everything was in the first two movies, because how magic is treated in Prisoner of Azkaban is so different. You know, it's like when you cut into that Quidditch match, it's no longer like bright sunny day, you know, I'm gonna beat Malfoy and catch the snitch. It's like it's raining, it's pouring, you know, like there's lightning everywhere. The Dementors show up. It's miserable. It's like this whole movie is just like the most exciting things. It's like Harry experiencing the most exciting things from his last 2 years at Hogwarts, but having all of the joy and novelty sucked out of it.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
Like Quidditch is miserable. I can't go to Hogsmeade with my friends, this and that. So it's like Buckbeak is so special to the story because it's like the only thing that makes Harry feel true joy in a way.
Right.
Which is why that scene where he's flying over the lake with him is just like, it's so beautiful.
Yeah, and Buckbeak also services a completely essential purpose later on as well with the whole time travel thing, which we're going to get to shortly. Yeah. But let's see. I wanted to say something. I totally forgot what it was now. I was going to say, so not only that, it's Buckbeak, and you mentioned not being able to sneak around school, and how that is actually the introduction that we get for the Marauders Map, which we were talking about briefly about how the film introduces Harry's parents' friends, so other people from that same class, and we never get the origin of the map itself, but in the movies, I think that it was intended to be mentioned in perhaps the next movie, and then the directors shifted over, and I think that kind of got lost. Do you think that hurts the franchise as a cohesive narrative overall, or do you think that when Lupin taps the thing and says mischief managed at the end, it's a little bit of a, hey, I know what's going on with this?
You know, I'm so glad you brought this up because I watched this with my roommate. We watched all of the Harry Potter movies together, and after we watched this movie, we brought that up and we talked about it. We were like, oh, it's pretty key that, you know, Harry's dad and his friends created the Marauders Map. That's like an important bit of information, not even just for like the franchise as a whole, but even just for this story. Like that's extremely important. And the movie, you're right, like it doesn't ever say that outright. There's never a moment where Lupin like sits down and says to Harry, like, you know, hey, you know, I'm Mooney. Your dad is Prom. Yeah. This is who everybody is. We made this map. I like that. I really appreciate filmmaking that forces the audience to lean in a little bit further and engage with the film on a more heady level. You know, like I think like if Chris Columbus were directing this, like if this was done in the style of the first two movies, you would have gotten a scene where Lupin sat down and said, you know, this is the origin of the map. This is where it came from. Yeah. But, you know, Cuarón being such a brilliant director, he gives you that information without ever expressing it directly. You know, it's like you're sort of like, you're like, okay, animals are this thing throughout the movie. Everybody can kind of turn into an animal. You see that Harry's dad's Patronus was the stag. Like, it's like you're getting all of these elements to it. And I think the reveal being Lupin knowing the spell, being him saying mischief managed, is so much more interesting and powerful than him just explaining it, you know? Like it's I think that's what you get when you bring a good filmmaker in to do one of these movies, is you don't get just straight exposition, but you get exposition revealed in clever, subtle ways. So it's, you know, it might have gone over my head when I was a kid, but like going back and looking at it, I'm like, I think that's really strong filmmaking, and I really appreciated it.
I love that the Marauders Map is basically a vehicle as well to not only one of the more suspenseful elements of the film, the whole Harry down the hallways looking for Peter Pettigrew, who scurries right past him, I'm assuming, in the hallway. But we get, you get the backstory a little bit more on Snape, Lupin, Black, Pettigrew, James Potter, and Lily, and everybody, sort of how that dynamic was at school, that they were all friends. Snape was kind of the outcast of the group. Everybody loved Lily, and Harry has Lily's eyes, apparently. Like, we learn a lot about his parents through all of their like peers that appear in this movie for the first time. And you get really, you get a lot of fun interactions with that too, when Lupin comes and saves Harry from Snape in the hallway, when they have that big confrontation in the Shrieking Shack, and Oldman, who we haven't even talked about Gary Oldman yet, and Gary Oldman gets his big scene about, I did my waiting, 12 years of it, which is now a meme, I think, which rightfully so, because that's a great line. I think that's kind of a good way to sort of touch on those performances and that dynamic. And then before we start wrapping up, we need to obviously talk about the time travel stuff.
No, I again, it's like time is an important element of this movie in so many ways, and part of that is sort of Harry discovering the past and sort of coming to a greater understanding of where he comes from. As like after this movie, his parents are no longer just these holy figures from his past. They were human beings who had friends and who had falling outs with friends, and you sort of see echoes of who they were in Sirius and in Lupin and all these people, and it sort of all works to give Harry a better understanding of who he's going to be and who he's, is he going to be like his parents? Is he going to be more like Voldemort? Like it's all, it is all him gaining a better, it is all him gaining a better understanding of his place in the world. And I think, the casting is so key to making all of that read. Like Gary Oldman is a phenomenal actor, obviously, but he getting him to play Sirius, I think, was a really good call, because he has that anger that I think, Harry, you see in Harry throughout the whole movie too. Like, when you first meet him, he's got that line where he's like, I did my waiting, 12 years of it. He's got this rage that I think Harry has a kind of a kindred spirit to. And him and Radcliffe just play off each other effortlessly, like when they finally get a chance to like sit down and talk, like that scene where those scenes near the end where you get to like actually see Harry and Sirius talk with each other and form a dynamic is so cool, because the actors are so incredible, and they really sell this idea that these two are kind of like made to be best friends, because Harry is so much like his dad and James was Sirius's best friend. So it's I think Harry Potter is probably the best cast series, I would say.
Yeah, I think
best cast overall series ever.
Well, there's not really a faulty note in the, I would say, kind of in the franchise, honestly. But to that end, what are your thoughts on this being the first of Michael Gambon's Dumbledore and how different he is?
I'm wondering if I should say this. I like how gay he feels. I don't know. It's like he's so like I don't know if J.K. Rowling knew at that point that character was going to be gay. But watching him in this movie, he's got this sort of he's so flamboyant, and he's so out there, and he's so witty, in a way that I think, what was the actor who played
Richard Harris
in the first movie? Richard Harris. Like what was great about Richard Harris in those movies is like he, of course, like he walks in and he's like, oh, that's like he's a very wise old wizard, he sort of maintains this element of control to him. And I think that's a part of Dumbledore, but I think Dumbledore is also like, he's at the same time sort of this very, very funny, whimsical guy. Whimsical guy, and casting Michael Gambon is just so smart, and he plays it so well, even though it is different. Watching them, especially in order, it's very striking, going from sort of, very old, wise,
regal kind of presence,
to this guy who's like, putting out candles with his hands, and, you know, doing like all this fun, crazy shit. So I think it's impeccable casting, and I think it really suited. I think it really suited I don't know how much Cuarón or the casting director knew about what Dumbledore was going to be doing in the future, or the kind of character he was going to end up being, but it worked so well. Like he is honestly, like, when I think of Dumbledore, I think of him.
Yeah, he's got a much more specific energy in general, I think, than, as you were saying, with Richard Harris, who was just like, oh, I'm the old wise guy who knows everything, but that's pretty much it. Like, it's hard to imagine Richard Harris as Dumbledore having a life outside of being there to give Harry advice, as great as he is in those movies. But Michael Gambon, you're like, this guy's got shit going on. Like, he's like, here, I know what you got the time turner, go ahead and do that. And he seems to always know what's going on. Obviously, in the time travel sequence, he's like delaying things because he's all knowing, apparently, which I love that's never explained, how Dumbledore just happens to know everything about everything. That he's just like, hey, you guys go do this. I got some shit to take care of. You got this covered, Hermione. 3 turns. I'll be in my office. Let me know how it goes.
Or at the end of the sequence where they like come back to the hospital wing as he's coming out the door, and they're like, Dumbledore, we did it. And he's like, did what? Good night.
Bye. Yeah.
He's so sassy.
Great.
It's great.
I feel like we've kind of leaned into the big climax. So before we get to the time travel stuff, you have Lupin's transformation. Pettigrew becomes the little rat man and runs away, which again is sort of some of the disturbing imagery. Made me think of like The Witches. If you've ever seen that movie from like 1990, there's some of that kind of rat boy imagery going on. I love the fact that Snape immediately kind of defends the children from Lupin, which again is kind of key to his character because he's always after them, but then at the same time will sacrifice his life to defend them. And I think that hints at the big twist later on at the end of the series with Snape and Lily and his feeling, his complex emotions towards Harry and his parents.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the time travel stuff.
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for time travel in general. So not, when this came out, I hadn't read the books at that point. And so I had no idea we were going to have to get time travel in here. So once it starts to go all like, not even Back to the Future, I guess it's more, it's the time travel logic where this had always happened. You just didn't know about it. And not like we're going to go back and change something. That was always Hermione seeing herself in the bushes, throwing the rock, howling to distract Lupin. What are your thoughts on the type of time travel that this movie embraces?
I think it's really brilliant because, we all want to be able to go back and fix our mistakes. Like we all want to be able to like go back and fix things that we did or do things differently. But in the context of the movie, no, they don't fix anything technically. They literally just buy themselves more time, and it's this fascinating, it's just a fascinating way to look at time travel because so much of like when people go back in time in movies, it is always like, it's all about the change. It's always about like, we have to go back and, fix this or stop Hitler or shoot Hitler or whatever, or it's like Back to the Future where it's like, oh, somebody messed up the timeline and we have to fix it now to repair the future. Whereas this movie's like, they're trying not to change things. It's like we can't mess with things. Literally all we're doing is just buying ourselves a little bit more time. And it's just a really unique way to look at it. And it makes that sequence feel so much more interesting. It's you get all of these little clues when you play through that bit in the movie the first time. Like when Hermione throws the stones into Hagrid's hut, you see like you get like a close up of the stone and you're like, oh, that's interesting shape, but you're not really registering this information as something you're supposed to be paying attention to until you play through the sequence again and you're like, oh, I see. They were here the whole time. This is how it always was. It's just very fascinating. I think I love that sequence, and it structurally makes the movie so interesting because you play through the climax and then and then you play through the climax. Did you play through the actual climax? But now that it's the actual climax, it's not the characters trying to like, you know, save the day or whatever. It's literally just them trying to. It's them just going back in time and fixing everything that was actually going on during the past. It's super fascinating. Again, too, like excellent music during during that whole sequence. I love the John Williams like puts like a stopwatch in there or something, like every time there's a musical cue, there's like you hear this ticking in the background, like they're running out of time.
Well, it's also the time travel sequence starts by going out through a clock and then ends by going back through the clock, which I thought was really cool. And I kind of forgot when I watched this, you know, for this episode, because it's been a while since I'd seen it, that the movie kind of progresses as if it's almost over, and then they don't reach their intended objective. You know, Sirius Black is about to be killed, and it's always like, oh wait, we need to go back and try the third act of this movie one more time. And then it is almost feels like a redo, but you know, it's sort of the Sixth Sense thing where when you go back, it all happened. And like, you never see Buckbeak's execution, for example, which I think is the like, yeah, okay, she threw the rock, but how are they going to get around Buckbeak getting killed? Oh, Buckbeak was already gotten off, gotten away before that. Things like that. I think I'm just a sucker for time travel stuff in general. And I love the way that it plays into not only the theme, but also Harry's kind of journey of sort of self-empowerment, I guess, by the end of it. That he can control his destiny, his emotions, overcome his past, and kind of focus on what he does have in this movie. You know, by the end, there's that big conversation with Lupin in the office where he's like, "Oh, none of it meant anything." He's like, "What do you mean it didn't mean anything? You saved a man from death. He's grown so much over the course of the story, and the fact that Lupin sort of lays that out, I really love the way that it's kind of, I don't know, it feels like very cathartic in a way to see Harry sort of struggle and discover, oh, maybe things aren't as dark and as desperate as I thought they were, having lived in the Dursley house for 13 years. There's a whole life out there for me once I get to the other side of this shitty thing called adolescence, basically.
Yeah. Exactly. Can I tell you what my favorite musical moment in this whole movie is?
Please.
So there is a Patronus theme that John Williams wrote for this movie that plays every single time a Patronus spell is cast. You hear it for the first time when Lupin casts it in the train, and it's just angelic choir. It's just like this beautiful angelic choir, and then Harry starts to learn how to cast the Patronus, and every time Harry casts a Patronus, like in the midsection of the movie, you get the angelic. You obviously you get the angelic choir, but then you hear like assorted instruments just in the background. Like you'll hear like a horn somewhere, or like drums somewhere, or like violins somewhere, and it's all just kind of like disconnected sounds. And that's sort of what a Patronus sounds like until you get to that final moment where in the time travel sequence, he basically becomes the person he thought was his dad and casts the Patronus. And all of those sounds like congeal into this actual musical theme, which is just the most beautiful piece of music in a Harry Potter movie. And I didn't notice that the music was behaving that way when I watched it as a kid, but of course now that I'm an adult and I notice, I'm paying attention. I'm trying to pay attention to every cinematic element. It's so cool to watch that music be used to reflect Harry's journey towards finding that happiness within himself. It's like he could do a Patronus, like he can cast a Patronus, but it's like it's not quite music yet. It's just an angelic choir and like assorted instruments in the background. But when he finally sort of realizes that, when he finally discovers that own power and that happiness within himself, you get the actual theme, that the actual musical theme that it's been building towards the whole movie. And it's exquisite composing, and it really is such a beautiful climax to his journey, because the whole movie is, like we've talked about him being like, this is a dark and scary world, and if I'm going to make it through this, I have to sort of find that inner happiness and that inner strength within myself. So yeah, that's probably, in my rewatch, that was probably my favorite moment.
That's a cool progression. I need to go back and listen to the score and kind of note that for myself, because when you said Lupin's casting it, I immediately, my mind went to the kind of punctuated by Lily's scream and that whole thing. But I need to go and listen to how that kind of builds on itself. So I think before we start wrapping up, we have to talk about the final shot. You had thoughts on this.
Yes.
Let's get to it.
Well, I want to hear your thoughts first.
I don't know. I just feel like it's a very abrupt ending. It feels like too, I don't know. It feels too cute in a way for me. Like, I feel like the movie has this balance of tones between, sort of the wonder of the last two and sort of the darkness that's to come. And I feel like that just felt like a weird, like, wrong note to end this very thematically rich Harry Potter coming of age story on. Just him kind of, it's the freeze frame, I think, that throws it off. If he had like flown into the sky and it's like a wide shot of him taking off or something, then I might have been like, okay, cool. Even if it sort of like did I don't know, maybe you know what that effect is called, when they zoom in on one little part of the screen and it kind of closes in on it, which they do a couple times in this movie.
Yeah.
If it had done that, then maybe I would be like, okay, cool, on him like taking off. It's the freeze frame thing. Almost, it feels kind of TV-ish in a way. Like, the next episode, freeze frame, run credits, over it. I don't know. It felt like a off note to conclude what is obviously one of the better Harry Potter films, if not the best. I have to, now I'm doing the rewatch obviously for the podcast, so I'll have to do that ranking it for myself at the end. But it just, I don't know, it felt like it's a little bit of a downer moment. Not necessarily the scene that precedes it, because it is, they changed that from the end of the book. I think he gets the firebolt like in the middle of the book or something, and they changed it to the end of the movie here, which makes sense because it sort of indicates kind of the hope that he's now found within himself and his new like connection with Sirius and his godfather and all that stuff. And so I like that element of that scene. It's just that last shot that I'm like, really, this is what we're doing? What are your thoughts? I feel like you're about to defend it now.
I was like you, I think, up until this most recent rewatch.
Okay.
Like I have always, like, basically every other Harry Potter movie ends with a wide shot. It ends with a big crane shot showing the castle or this or that. Like the second one ends with like Hagrid coming back into the Great Hall and everybody like cheering and hugging him, and then you do this helicopter shot out of Hogwarts and everything. And it's like, yeah, like this movie ends with this freeze frame on Daniel Radcliffe's face. I pulled it up on my computer because I wanted to look at it again, because I actually noticed something about it that I didn't notice before, and I want to talk about it in along with everything else. But it is such a striking point to end the movie on, both in the context of the movie and compared to the other Harry Potter movies, which I think really, really draws attention to how to what it means in the context of the story. So when I watched it this time, knowing that it was getting to that last shot, I was like paying attention to the movie, and I was like thinking about, what was happening in the movie and what would sort of indicate, what would give meaning to that last shot. And I think I mentioned this earlier in the podcast, but there's that scene where Harry is practicing with Lupin, and he says, and Lupin was like, what did you use as your memory for the Patronus? What was your happy memory that you used for the Patronus? And Harry says, like, riding a broom for the first time. But that doesn't work. It's like that was his happiest memory. But like now Harry's in a place where it's like, happiness is this much more complicated thing, and it's not just tied to like, oh, flying, oh, doing magical stuff. That's really cool. And I think what that final shot indicates to me is it is like the punctuation mark that says like Harry has finally found happiness again. Like he has finally found a way to like to feel like he's finally found like joy in the things that bring him joy. And I think what you get with the what you get with this freeze frame that you wouldn't get if it were just like a regular shot is how. This is going to be a weird observation, but whenever the Dementors are sucking the life out of Harry, you see sort of like his face distorted towards them,
right?
Like the soul is sort of like coming out of him, you know, like they're sucking the happiness out of him, but it literally looks like they're like sucking himself out of him. And what's so fascinating about this freeze frame is that same kind of effect is being used on his face, but instead of his face sort of getting pulled outward, it's getting pulled inward. So it's like, does that make any sense?
Yeah.
It's kind of
I never
hard
noticed
to like
the connection between those two effects in there.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to describe it, but especially because it's like a blur effect kind of. It's like instead of the image sort of blurring outwards, it's blurring inwards towards him.
Right.
So if you're to take that in context with the visual language of the rest of the movie, the meaning derived from here is that now Harry is sort of, he's taking back his own happiness, and he's sort of reclaiming his soul in a way that is like the opposite is happening when the Dementors are sucking the life out of you. And it's like, it's so triumphant. I love this final shot because it just feels like his entire journey over the course of the movie just coming together in kind of a perfect merging of story and visual language. It is definitely off-putting. Like it is I will concede that it is like definitely like a striking shot. And like I think I speak for everybody when I say that like when we all saw this for the first time, we were like, wait a minute, whoa, that's the final shot of the movie. But it's like we said, I think this is a movie that's all about theme and meaning and you know, I think what makes it the best directed Harry Potter movie is how it uses the image to sort of reflect back on meaning. And in that sense, I think it is kind of the perfect final shot because it's a movie that is all about, like I said, it's all about, you know, sadness and happiness and how we sort of find that within ourselves. So it's so the fact that he gets a broom from Sirius, who is like his family now, and he is like now discovered that he has this power and this, you know, this joy within him. It's like it's great. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
No, I think you are. In fact, I'm you know, you're talking about him sort of reclaiming his life, that kind of thing, and I'm thinking of the sort of metaphor of it kind of being the light, like almost like he was struggling in the very beginning, Lumos Maxima,
to
find
exactly.
light, to find like something to cling on to, and he's like light. Damn, I can't get the light to stay on. And then, you know, literally at the end, he gets a broom called the Firebolt, which creates light. Yeah. If you want to really get deep into it, fire creates light. And then at the end of the movie, it's like this, like, you know, joyful moment. Sort of only time he makes an expression like that in the film, other than the last shot, is on Buckbeak's back.
Yeah.
So I think that.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And it, you know, to be fair, it was never the kind of thing that like, oh, this ruined the movie for me. Fuck you, Prisoner of Azkaban. Sure. It was just like, okay. I mean, I guess that's the last shot. But because especially when you come from the last two where it's big or, you know, John Williams score and like panning out of the Great Hall, and everybody's crying and stuff, you know, which are way more Chris Columbus-y obvious ways to end a kid's movie. And I think that this, it's definitely a bold choice on Cuarón's part. And I think the more we're talking about it, the more I'm like, okay, I see where he's going for. I don't know if I 100% agree with that being the last shot, but I like the intentionality in it. I can appreciate, especially in the context of, like I just said, the beginning and kind of the book ending of the movie of him, where he is emotionally at the start and at the end. There is something, he has something in his life to look forward to be happy to, some connection other than, his friends at school. Like you said, a family that's not locking him under the stairs for over a decade.
And it's like he's got it too. It's like he's got a connection now that isn't just, oh wow, I'm a wizard. Being a wizard is cool. Again, like we've said, this movie is so much more intimate and personal, and it's so much more about like the things that we actually need as human beings to be happy and grow and develop, whether we're wizards or not. So it's like, I love that this director chose to end the movie on a moment that just really speaks to that and really thematically reflects that in a way that, again, no offense to any of the other directors of this franchise, but I feel like none of the other directors were particularly interested in. It's like you end the movie where the movie ends. You end the movie where the story ends, and you land it in a way that is pretty and aesthetically pleasing and, makes people cry. Whereas Cuarón is like, he's the kind of director who's like, every image has to mean something, and every image has to tell the story in a deep and complex way. And so, of course, the final frame of the movie is it's not going to be what you expect, but it's going to be something that I think, upon really close inspection, feels like, in my opinion, kind of like the perfect end, perfect end to the movie. So, yeah.
I think that's also the perfect end to the podcast. I feel like we've ended on the final shot. The
final shot.
The Crooked Table Podcast will return right after these messages.
Was A Quiet Place inspired by Signs It Comes at Night and War for the Planet of the Apes? Was Ready Player One influenced by Avatar, Wreck-It Ralph, and The Last Starfighter? Is The Hurricane Heist more influenced by Sharknado or Geostorm? These are the kinds of questions my guest co-hosts and I discuss on my podcast, Piecing It Together. Every week, we look at a new movie and try to figure out what other movies inspired it. Whether it's the story, the character development, tone, or even use of music. Every movie was influenced by something that came before, and we want to figure out what. Check out Piecing It Together on your favorite podcast app, or check us out on piecingpod.com. You can also follow us on social media at piecingpod. Piecing It Together is a part of the All Points West podcast network.
So, Jackson Smith, if there's nothing else to delve into, I mean, obviously we could talk about this movie much longer than we are, but in the interest of not going over 2 hours we were for Revenge of the Sith, if there's nothing else we want to mention, can you tell people where they can find you on social media?
My official Twitter is Jackson C. Smith 95. And so you can find me there. I like to post memes and opinions on there. Or you could follow us on our Screen Fever Twitter, which is like I said, Adam and I's YouTube channel. And the handle for that is Real Screen Fever. And there we have a link to our YouTube channel, which is called Screen Fever. You can just type that into YouTube. And again, we've got podcasts, video essays, tons, short films, tons of cool stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jackson, for coming back from the Star Wars series to the Harry Potter series. Next time we'll get you on here about something that's not part of a bigger franchise and just kind of a one-off, one of your favorite movies, just so figure out what you want to talk about next time, because we'll definitely bring you back soon.
Thank you so much.
Actually, I think we were supposed to do the Matrix sequels at some point.
Yes, we have to do that as well.
So It will be part of a franchise. I lied. So maybe that'll be your next time. We'll figure out when we'll do that sometime soon. But thanks so much for coming on, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
This has been a production of crookedtable.com. All rights reserved.
CROOKED.